Go right into the next session, and we're still on the theme for today, overview of Python for AI programming. And so the next session will be taken by Professor Emmanuel Adetiba and Engineer Emmanuel Owolabi. So first we'll have functions and models by Engineer Emmanuel Owolabi. So are you on, Engineer Owolabi?
Yes. So like you've rightly mentioned, my name is Emmanuel Owolabi. And we will be looking through Python for artificial intelligence, functions, and models. For those who have spoken or presented earlier, they've done a great deal of job, and I will just layer on what they have done in order to look at functions and models. And thanks to all the participants and the sponsors. Okay, without much ado, I will look at Python introduction. I'm sure we've discussed this earlier, perhaps in other presentations as well. We know that it's an interpreted, compiled, and interactive object-oriented programming language. It's quite dynamic, and it's an open source language as well. It was created in the 90s by Guido van Rossum at the Stichting Mathematisch Centrum in Netherlands. Contrary to what most people believe, when they hear about Python, they think it's a snake, right? But it's not a snake. The guy who created it, Guido, names it after Monty Python because he was looking for a very short name and a mysterious one also to that effect, to be able to give that programming language a name. And Monty Python is the name of one of the comedians, the stage comedies that happens in the 70s around UK. So he decided to name the programming language Python. Can you see my screen? Okay. And also, I like to say that there's a big community of Python programmers with conferences and magazines. I do not know if there's a lot happening in the Nigerian community, but for other communities, I think there's quite a bit happening over there. And let me just go out of presentation mode for once, and I will stop sharing my screen. I want us to look at that link, okay? The community link. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Okay. So I'm going to go into, I'm going to show us that community. If you guys could do a lot to rejuvenate that, it will be a good thing, because then it shows the fact that we are collaborating, right? And there's a lot of work to be done. Okay, so the Python community is what we have on the board. And if you take a look, you have national conferences, right? Take a look at where you are domiciled. If you take a look at Nigeria, for instance, where your school is, if I visit, you see it's even an archived website. So I think we could get on board with this and be able to rejuvenate that community and make it worthwhile, right? I think the last activity over there was done in 2020. Can you see that? So please, the organizer should take a look at that and ensure that that community is rejuvenated. Okay, so back to our presentation. All right, And then you also have the website for the Python itself. For those who are new, you could go into that website and do all your tutorials and do a lot of readings and understanding about what Python is all about. And the documentation is also there for the language. Why Python? Python is very lean. I'll use that word. You've got less code. As you can see from all the other presenters, you don't have a lot of stress to be able to code it. Python is also platform independent. I think in the presentation by is it John, right? He mentioned how you could use Python to interconnect all other programming languages. So it's platform independent. And you have pre-built libraries. There's also a massive community support because it's open source and it's easy to learn. Of course, there are a lot of applications for that in the research and development area. Some of the applications of Python, you have just listed a bit of them here. Artificial intelligence, Python can be very useful there. Machine learning, as one of the contributors to the last presentation mentioned. Data science, data analytics, data engineering, as well as software development in general. I've happened to work on fintech projects, and Python came really handy. So we have a wide variety of application area for Python. And then you have the syntax rule. I won't go into details of this because during the last presentation as well, a lot had been mentioned. And for those who are looking through the fundamentals, I think going through that python.org will be a good one. I also want to mention, before we go to functions and modules, there is this website that I take beginners through. It's called, let me exit. I think we will do a bit of looking through some of this. Okay, so if you go to, so let me go to the index. If you go to this website, it's W3 Schools. I mean, for beginners, you have a variety of languages here that you can learn and you can go through. And the one we're looking at today is Python. So if you come here to Python, you click on Python and you have the Python tutorials, right? You have all the tutorials, the areas that you can learn a lot from. You have the intro, the getting started, the strings, and for those looking at fundamentals, right? File handling, Python modules, the NumPy, the pandas, the SciPy, the Django, and all of that. You can actually go through those tutorials and learn a lot from them. Then for Matplot library, for machine learning, you see that. And for databases, you see the MySQL, the MongoDB, and also you have a list of references. So this site is a very good resource site for those who are looking to enhance their knowledge or who are looking to start learning Python. So let's go back to my presentation. Functions in Python. Basically, a function is a block of code that performs a specific task. No more, no less. And we have two types of functions. Standard library functions. I think Professor Adetiba will go through libraries eventually in the next presentation. So we have standard library functions, which are inbuilt functions to Python. They are available for use. They are inbuilt, already done. And then we have user-defined functions. Those user-defined functions are the ones we can create ourselves based on our requirement, right? For instance, I want to layer back to someone's contribution about genomics data or database. For instance, you're doing a while loop through a list of data and you're looking for one particular thing, right? And perhaps this is what you will be doing a lot in your program or in your application. You could develop a user-defined function which you can call on at every time that you need to do that. So those your while loop, your for loop, and all of that, you could actually put that in your user-defined functions. And functions do support, and any changes to the content of such a data structure in the function will also affect the variables that are being passed in the function code. So that's that about functions. Keep it in mind, two types of functions: standard library functions, which are inbuilt functions by Python, available for use, and user-defined functions, which are functions you create yourself. Let's take a look at practical example of user-defined function. So first, for anything you want to do in terms of function, you have to do your declaration. And if you take a look here, you have the declaration or definition of the function name, whatever the name you want to give your function. So if you look at the right side, you have the def word is a keyword used in declaring your function. And then your function name is any name given to the function. You decide that. And then you have the function body, what you want the function to do, which will probably be a line of code. And then you have the return. This return is optional for you to return value from the functions. If you do not want to return value from the functions, you could also do that. For instance, take a look at this function. We have keyword for our declaration, which is def greet. The function always comes with these parentheses. And going back to the beginning of this example, you look at inside that parentheses, you have what? The argument. The arguments are any value that you pass into the function. We'll see more of that as we move on. And if you take a look at this, the function is greet. And what does it do? Remember I said earlier that once you define your function, then you put in the code with which executes your function. Here, we're printing hello world. Perhaps we can go to the Python notebook and try this particular one, because I understand this should be hands-on as well. So this is how you define the function, and this is how you call the function. If I call the function, say greet with the parentheses, it should bring about what the function is meant to do. And if you look back up here, what is the function meant to do? The function is supposed to run the code within it, which is to print hello world. 1 minute, I'm going out of the presentation mode. Can we take a look at I'm new to your Jupyter lab, but let's see if I can, to greet and to print hello. You can even put your name in it. Hello, Prof.
Yes, I'm following you.
Okay, is anyone practicing the?
Yes, we're practicing.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay. I think I made a mistake.
You omitted the colon.
Yes. And really? What am I? Is it, can I run the code in this place? Can someone help me with this?
Yes. Let me see what you're trying to do. Yeah. You're having an error there.
Yes, I'm having an error.
An indentation.
Once I
No, you have to the greet.
Yeah,
Greet should go back a bit. It should be on the same line with print, with the beginning of print. Yep. So you can save and run. Yeah.
No, do I need to set? Can I run it like this?
Yeah, you can run. It automatically saves anyway.
Yeah.
And it's completed. The run is completed. Once it shows a number, it's shown.
Yeah, you should be able to show me the output of my.
No,
So I just.
great to another step.
Oh no.
You indent it, let it be in line with the def. Push it
Yes.
to the beginning, or you take it to another. Yeah.
Am I good now?
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
run it. Let's see.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how you call function. In function, what does it print out? The information here, it prints out this code. This line of code is nothing other than to print, and it does that effectively. Yeah, that's one example. Can we go back again to, do we have feedback from people over there?
I think they are following.
Okay. So let's, earlier I mentioned about the arguments, right? That you can pass any value to the function. Let's take a look at that example. Python function with arguments. If you take a look from where we're coming from, function with 2 arguments, remember that the first one that we did for greet does not have any argument passed to it. But in this case, the same thing we are going to do, we declare our function name, add numbers. But here we have 2 arguments, number 1, comma number 2. That is the argument that is being passed to this function that we are defining. And then what will be the next? The code with which that function, the code with which runs, the function runs. And then we have sum equals to num1 plus num2, which is corresponding to the argument of the function. And then we can go ahead and print sum. And that sum we're going to print will be an order or the value of number 1 and number 2. And if we're going to call the argument, if we're going to call the function, remember this is a function with no argument, right? But take a look here, function call with 2 values. We must pass an argument or parameters, which is your number 1 and number 2 to that function. And those are the arguments with which the function will run. Once we pass that, you will see your number 1 will be the 5, and number 2 will be the 4. And by the time we call the function, we call the function with that argument 5 and 4, it will print out the sum of 5 and 4. And if you do that with your Python notebook, this should output 9. Let's quickly take a look at that. I think I can copy this and put it in my... Okay, so I have defined the function, add numbers, and the code is sum equals to num1 num plus num2, and then I print the sum of that. And then I call the function here. If I run this, it should give us the value 9. Yeah. Can I rerun? Okay, so what if we change this argument that we pass into it, say 10 and 15, right? This is our function call with our argument being passed into that function. If we do that, it should give us another value, 25. Are we all together?
Okay, I think we are good.
Okay, good. So I just move on. Okay, so that is that about the Python functions in the simplest form of it, as well as the ones with argument. We've seen the one without an argument, and we've seen the one with argument. And now let's look at Python library functions. Remember I said earlier that there are two types of functions, the user-defined functions and the library functions. We've seen the user-defined function, which we create ourselves, and now we look at the library functions. In Python, standard library functions are built in such a way that they are available for users to access. Example of our print. Remember, we've been using print. Print is actually a library function for Python. It's inbuilt. We didn't write the code to tell the computer how to do the print. So print prints the string inside the quotation mark, like we've seen. Another example is the square root function, which is sqrt. It returns the square root of a number. And if we're going to, let's take a look at that. I think we can do that on our console. If I say square root, now if I do this, will it return any value for me if I run this? You see, it gives an error, right? Because we didn't pass a value into it. So let's do that again. And then say 144, for instance. What's going on? Do I need to import maths? Hello?
What's the issue?
I can't get my square root function to work.
I don't.
You have to import. You have to
Hello,
import.
sir.
Sorry?
Hello, sir.
You have to import
Yes.
the library.
Hello, sir.
Okay, I think somebody is talking. Yeah, who is that?
Yes, sir. Prof, sir. My name is Olashino Rotimi.
Okay.
Yes. It will not. It will not run because we have not created a function in that regard, sir. You only created a function for sum. It will only run if you have created a function to perform it, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it will.
Okay. Okay.
Yes,
so let me just go ahead then.
You can import the import map.
Actually, so it should work with that, right?
You have to import the library function that contains the library.
Yes, that's what I.
Exactly.
That's what I was thinking.
No,
it doesn't run.
No, it should be as import math as you have to import it as you have to create an instance of that library. Then square root is a method inside the instance.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Except even if you remove as, sir, you can just say math.sqrt. It will run like that. Math.
Oh, yeah.
Math
okay, so I just take it as a method. Yeah. Access the method.
It should go
like that.
Yes, sir.
It should go. Okay.
Oh,
yes. Wow. Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. So that is the function for the inbuilt function for Python library functions, right? Same as the power, which returns the power of the number. And these functions are defined inside modules. And to use them, we must include the module inside our program.
Are we together?
Are you with me?
Let's do math. You can use, if you are not creating the instance, you can just do math.sqrt. Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I just did.
That's the goal.
Yeah, that's a
yes. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so we've seen, from that example, we could see how we use the inbuilt functions for the Python library. And like I said, let's take a look. So the library functions are defined inside the module. Remember, we are looking at functions and module, and then this will take us into the module point of view. And to use them, we must include the module. So from the example that we just did, that we just saw, we could see here, okay, that we had to import math, because inside math is the method for the square root. And in the same way, when we are defining our modules, we have to do the same. So let's take a look at, okay, this is the example of what we did earlier to compute the square root, right? I think that's what the other person was trying to point me to. These are the use cases, right? We import math, the square root compute code, which is the square root equals to math.square root of 4. This is another way to get that square root done. Then we can then go into benefit of the functions. The functions helps us to it makes it easy for code reusability. We can use the same function multiple times in our program. It also helps us to have easy readability, which is code readability when we're doing our coding. And then, like I said, that takes us into modules in Python. Does anyone have questions around functions? Or perhaps we can keep the question till the end of the presentation. So, like I said earlier, Python is not a snake. It's just a group of people trying to make jokes. And the developer of Python decided to use the name. So modules in Python. A module is a Python file that contains functions, variables, etc. in it, and it does have a .py extension. And it is simply a Python file that can be imported into another program or another Python program. So we can have a collection of functions in a module, and we can then use the dot method to call that function within the module. So the name of the module will be the name of the file, of the Python file that we have created, and we can easily import that module whenever it is needed. Example of that statement for importing is to import module name, and then to access the content of that module, which is the use of the dot operator. We can then do the module name dot the function within the module that we're trying to access. Example is this Fibonacci number module. We could take this code, all of this code, which has two functions. One is the fib, and the other is the fib2. The fib writes the Fibonacci series up to n, and the fib2 does what? Return Fibonacci series up to n. And once we take this code and save it, we can save it as Fibo, for instance. If we save it as Fibo, then we could import, let's go to the so I did that earlier. I was trying to see how I can use this platform. So we have this code, right? And it is saved as fibo.py. Now we want to access the functions within that file. The fibo is a module. So if we can, how do I get this code across? Can I put it in the chat?
Just download. You can download the notebook and push it on the chat platform. I guess you are already on the chat the WhatsApp
So I
group.
come here, I do that, download, right?
Yeah, you can download the notebook and just push
I
it
can do
to
this.
the, yes, if you download it, it will put it on your local machine. Then you can push it.
Then I can push it on the chat.
Exactly on the, you'll be added to the WhatsApp.
I can have that. Okay. All right. So I'd save this as fibo.py. For me to access the content, which is the functions within that module, so that becomes a module. I think I can I access it from here? I will do import.
Import it here.
Fibo. First, as I import it, then I go ahead. If I want to access the, for instance, let's say I want to access this function that I've defined as 5, I would just go in and say, remember the dot method? Then I would go in and say fibo dot 5. I cannot leave it empty because it requires me to pass an argument, right? So I need to pass n into it. So let's say 500, for instance, and then I can go ahead and run. So now, with the help of the import of the module, I have been able to access the module and the function within the module. The function within the module is your 5, and I've passed an argument or a parameter of 500. Let's take a look at the second function in the same module, which is 5.2. I want to access that as well. I can go ahead and just say, can I do that on this new line?
Apparently, you can.
Okay, 5.52. Remember that the name of that function within that module is 5.2, and then I'll pass an argument, say 100, for instance. And then I'm able to access that function and run that function favorably. I think we can also apply this to a lot of other, we can apply it to a lot of codes in the research and development field that we might have. Then let's move on to, okay. So basically this is the fundamental approach to building your modules as well as your functions, basically. But before I close, and that brings us to the end, but before I close, I also put some resources here. But before I close, because I also remember that someone said that the platform that we have for running the code, in case it's not available at some point, you could also use, 1 minute, you could also use this W3 School. So you can see here, here are some function explanation. Within that, we've seen the functions, function declarations. We've also seen modules and how modules are related to functions, and how we assess the functions that are within modules, and how we call our functions as well, those with argument and those without argument. And this is just the basic fundamental application to a variety of all other programming techniques that you will use in Python. When you're doing functions, this is how it will be done. When you are handling modules and accessing the functions within the modules, this is basically how you'll do it, both for the standard library functions and the user-defined functions. Okay, so that brings me to the end of the presentation, and I have a few resources linked here. Someone earlier mentioned to me Colab research.google.com is also a very good resource to use to do your practice as well. And we will do well to publicize that, because Google is the one sponsoring our program, sponsoring this event, basically. I've also got a book. I think I would just think that is a book, Basic Programming with Python. I will package it when I'm sending my slides, presentation slides to the organizers. Otherwise, thank you very much, everyone, for your time. And I hope that collaboration will be better going forward.
Yeah, thank you very much. So do we have any specific questions or comments from physical online participants? We can quickly take that before we move on. All right. So we have a couple of interactions going on online as well, so we can look at that. All right, thank you very much. That has been an insightful session. So basically, we are just being, introduced to these things, and then it's left to the participants to dig deeper and make sense of all of these, put them together, and use them to do something interesting.